And, you know, his rhetoric is, of course,
terrifying.
Extreme.
His rhetoric is terrifying.
It's terrifying, but I think it's also indicative of what he's willing to do over the course of the next 12 months to make sure that Republicans retain the House.
You know, it's bad when even a CNN panel has to stop and ask, wait, are you actually defending this? Tonight, on Abby Phillip's Table for Five, a Trump-aligned guest tried to brush off the former president talking about executing political opponents as if it were just another joke, another bit of trolling we're all supposed to ignore. But Abby Phillip and Sam Seder don't let him escape. They push on the core question. Is it sedition to tell troops to follow the law, or is that literally their duty? What follows is one of the clearest takedowns of MAGA logic you'll see on cable news. If you're tired of this "he's just joking" game, stick around. This one's worth watching.
When it comes to Donald Trump's rhetoric, America is well rehearsed. There's been a decade of insults, provocations, controversies. You named the line and Trump has pretty much crossed it. But did he go too far this time? 6 Democrats released a video telling service members to disobey illegal orders. The president called them traitors. He said that they could be executed for seditious behavior. He even promoted another message that called for their hangings. One columnist says it's all a distraction from the bad news that he's been facing this week, from Epstein to the economy. Now, while that could most certainly be true, can it be ignored? Should it be ignored? Especially when those lawmakers say that his rhetoric is putting their lives actually in danger. After all, Trump and Republicans get angry when Democrats, liken his behavior to a fascist or a dictator. But calling for the execution of political opponents fits the definition. And it's certainly more extreme than calling someone a descriptor. I mean, do you think that, I hear this sort of like, don't fall for the okie doke, he's just trying to distract you thing from Democrats a lot. Do you think this falls into that category, or is it something else?
Well, I mean, I think, frankly, you've got two sides that are preparing for perhaps what's going to happen over the course of the next year. Donald Trump's approval ratings are dismal. The Republican Party is on their back heels. They got destroyed, wiped out in a way that I haven't seen in 20 years in those elections 2 weeks ago. And so I think there's genuine concern amongst a lot of people in the country that Donald Trump is going to send in troops. He's already got these 500-person rapid response forces that are beginning to train and are going to be able to be deployed by spring. I think there's a lot of people who are concerned about what's going to happen over the course of the next 12 months in the run-up to the midterm elections. And I think the Democrats were trying to get out in front of that, and I think Donald Trump is trying to prevent them from getting out in front of it. And, you know, his rhetoric is, of course,
terrifying.
Extreme.
His rhetoric is terrifying.
It's terrifying, but I think it's also indicative of what he's willing to do over the course of the next 12 months to make sure that Republicans retain the House.
No, but what do you mean? Do you mean in terms of actually following through on the threats, or what?
Well, I think there is a concern that Donald Trump is going to try and prevent the midterm elections from happening.
Okay, you're talking about these are the illegal orders.
Okay, that he's trying to. Oh, okay.
Are.
But let's just talk about just what's happening right now and how we just think that he's planning ahead. What world do we live in when a president, it gives an idea that, yes, I think execution is okay for my political opponents? What world do we live in when we just ignore that and we don't talk about what that actually means? Because we're used to what he's done. He's numbed us. We're normalizing his behavior. I think that's really dangerous. And I think all of it, yes, it is a distraction. Yes, it is something for us to pay attention to. But how dangerous is it as we come off of a assassination of Charlie Kirk? How dangerous is it to hear him say this as if someone is...
The violence in this country is one-sided, and everyone knows it, right? What Trump is talking about is sedition, which is a law and order process. It goes, by the way, you know, George Washington had generals who did insurrections put to death as well, right? So, like, that's our first president that we ever had. Trump is...
Wait, hold on.
Let me just be clear.
Are you suggesting that Trump is right, that these Democrats
No,
should
what
be
I'm
put
saying
to
is
death for
that
sedition?
you guys are making the same mistake that you always do about Trump, which is that you're taking him literally instead of seriously. What he is obviously pointing out...
He's the president of the United States. I think it is warranted to take him quite literally.
But you fall for this game every time.
I'm sorry, he is not candidate Trump anymore. It's President Trump.
What's the
But what
game?
those
He gets
Democrats
to be
are doing
taken
is
seriously.
absolutely treasonous. It's disloyal. They are causing division within the military. Who's issuing unlawful
How is that
orders?
treasonous?
How is
telling
his
me-
actions not the same type of normalizing of violent rhetoric that led to the assassinations that we've seen? That's come from DNR. I mean, we've seen.
Which are?
I'm saying I think
Democratic
there's been,
lawmakers in Minnesota
Oh,
were
the ones that were
assassinated.
killed after the Medicaid wasn't expanded to illegal immigrants.
Hold
the
on.
ones that,
Wait, excuse me?
It's just
That's okay?
No,
What are you-
I'm
what are you
saying they were
saying?
Democrats that killed them.
No,
this is
it-
not
you don't-
Republicans
it
killing
wasn't-
don't know
Democrats.
that.
No, that is
I'm sorry.
not
You do
true.
not
this
know
is
that.
sensitive to me because Charlie Kirk was actually a friend.
I understand
And to hear
that,
people
but-
talk about Donald Trump and Republicans
I'm sorry,
inciting
but Terry,
violence, it's just crazy.
The
It's
history
crazy. I'm
of
sorry.
political violence in this country is not a Democrat story. That is factually inaccurate.
It is in the last 5 years.
No, it is in the last 1 year. One, single. Okay? This year, 2025, is the first and only year in the last 20 years where left-wing violence has exceeded right-wing violence. That is a fact. In the last 5 years, it's been 4 years, it's right-wing violence, 1 year left-wing violence. So you can have the aperture only be expanded to the last 10 months, but in the history of this modern political time, that is just not accurate. But even if it were,
He's
if
not allowed to
Donald
say that.
Trump thinks that there is a problem of political violence in this country, why on earth
Would he say
are
that?
comments like these acceptable to
Sedition
you?
is a lawful process. You have to be
Sure.
tried and convicted in the court of law.
Sure.
He's not
But
encouraging
you
people.
actually
He's not saying
believe-
this is Hitler.
But hold on a second.
These people are fascists.
You actually believe that Democrats putting out a video saying "follow the law"
I think
is
it was
sedition?
terrible. I think it was terrible.
You think that's sedition?
And look, we've already seen Democrats weaponize
Terry,
the
let me
government.
ask you a question. Do you think that Democrats putting out a video saying this is follow the law, don't follow
Why do you need
illegal
to tell
orders?
people to follow the law?
Do you think that is sedition?
Everyone in the military
It's a
knows
yes
you need
or
to follow
no. It
the
is
law.
a yes or no question.
I
Is it
think-
sedition to tell people to follow the law?
I think Democrats have a long and standing history of undercutting
I'm just
and undermining
saying
the
you're
Constitution.
not
and
willing
our-
to say yes or no because it's very obvious
Clear.
that the answer is no.
Because
if
worry-
that were the case,
It's
then,
a wink
then,
and a nod. That's the
then a
reason.
lot of
Their
things
words
would
are
be sedition.
perfectly.
We
It's a
would be
perfect
executing
video,
people left, right,
but
and
it's a
center.
wink and a nod, and it's all meant to undermine the president of the United States. The military does not have a right to
Guess
undermine
what?
the chief.
Hold on a second. In this country, you do get to undermine the president of the United
Not
States.
if you're in the military.
No.
He's the
No.
commander-in-chief.
If you are a member of Congress, you absolutely, in this country, have a free
accountability.
right
But they're
to
calling
undermine
on
the
the
president of the
military
United
to
States. You know that,
undermine
right?
the
Just
commander-in-chief.
made the argument that the Democrats were making in that video, because the fact is the military is not obligated to follow illegal orders.
Who's giving the illegal orders? Where
Well,
are they? Give me the
The
example of the
Democrats
illegal
were
order.
saying specifically, you're not obligated to follow illegal orders.
Okay,
period.
then what illegal orders are they talking about?
Well,
they're
they're
just
in the future.
just in case.
Yeah,
Because you're
just in the case.
because they're
right
all
now
crazy.
we have a
No
judge
one's gonna
who
stop
said
the midterms.
Trump's,
No one's gonna stop the
Trump,
midterms.
Trump's sending in.
Who just came up with the conspiracy theory that Republicans are going to stop the midterms?
Trump's
That's
sending in-
crazy. That's a conspiracy theory.
All right.
Calling
We
it
have to
law.
leave.
All right, let's step back from the shouting match and look at what actually happened in this segment. Because underneath the crosstalk, this panel exposes something really dangerous about where Trump's politics have gone and how his defenders try to clean it up after the fact. At the heart of this debate is a simple sequence of events. Democratic lawmakers put out a video reminding service members that they are legally bound to disobey illegal orders. That's not radical. That's Military Law 101. The oath is to the Constitution, not to a man. Donald Trump responds by calling them traitors, suggesting they could be executed for sedition, and amplifying a message that talks about hanging them. That's not a policy disagreement. That's the President of the United States, casually throwing around the language of state violence against his political opponents. And what does the MAGA pundit at the table do? He deploys the oldest, laziest defense in the Trump playbook. You're taking him literally instead of seriously. We've heard this for almost a decade. When Trump says something outrageous, we're told, relax, he's just joking. When he threatens people, he doesn't really mean it. When he toys with violence, it's just rhetoric. But here's the problem. He's not a YouTuber farming engagement. He's the former president, and very possibly the next one. The words of a man who can send troops, sign orders, and unleash federal power are not content. They're signals. That's why Abby Phillip's pushback is so important. She cuts through the spin and says, in plain terms, he's the president. We are absolutely right to take his words literally, because the people listening to him, the most loyal followers, the most radicalized segments, are not parsing the nuance of just joking. They hear traitors and execution, and they take that as permission. Then comes Sam Seder, and this is where the MAGA line really starts to crumble. Seder points out what Democrats are actually afraid of. Not some abstract policy dispute, but the very real possibility that Trump uses the military and paramilitary-style forces to intimidate voters, interfere with elections, or suppress dissent. He talks about rapid response units, the rhetoric about stopping midterms, the drumbeat of enemies within. Is every scenario guaranteed? No, but that's not the standard. The standard is this. When a leader starts normalizing violence against their opponents, what responsibility do we have to pay attention? And notice how the Trump defender tries to wriggle away from that. He keeps shifting the frame. First, it's sedition to tell troops to follow the law. Then it becomes Democrats are undermining the commander-in-chief. Then when pressed for a simple yes or no, is it sedition to say follow the law, refuse illegal orders? He suddenly can't answer. That's the giveaway. If your argument collapses the moment someone asks you to apply it consistently, it's not an argument, it's a shield. The same thing happens when the conversation turns to political violence. The MAGA pundit tries to rewrite the story. It's not Republicans, it's Democrats. It's all one-sided the other way. But another panelist calmly points out the broader pattern. Over years, right-wing violence has been the dominant trend. Even if there's 1 year where left-wing attacks spike, you don't get to erase everything else. And even if the numbers were perfectly symmetrical, which they are not, you still can't justify a former president talking so casually about execution and hanging as a response to a video that literally tells people, obey the law. Think about how twisted this is. Lawmakers say, do not follow illegal orders. Trump world replies, that's treason, maybe deserving execution. If you flip that around, you suddenly see how authoritarian the logic is. In a healthy democracy, follow the law, protect the Constitution is the safest sentence you can say. Under Trump's framing, it becomes suspect, disloyal, even deadly. And that's why this Abby Phillip segment matters more than just as a fun MAGA gets owned clip. It exposes the 3 big strategies of Trump-era politics. 1. Minimize the threat. He's just kidding. You're overreacting. Don't take him literally. Translation: let him say anything and never hold him to it. 2. Deflect to Democrats. What about their rhetoric? What about their side? What about this one incident? Translation: never talk about what Trump actually did. Always change the subject. 3. Punish accountability as treason. When Democrats remind the military of its legal obligations, that becomes sedition. Translation: loyalty should be to the leader, not the law. Those 3 moves together are how democracies slide, not all at once, not in a single speech, but inch by inch, clip by clip, norm by norm. So when Abby Phillip insists on a straight answer, when Sam Seder lays out the stakes of illegal orders and military duty, they're not just owning a MAGA pundit. They're doing something much more basic and much more important, recentering the conversation around the rule of law instead of the rule of one man. Because at the end of the day, this isn't complicated. Soldiers are obligated to refuse illegal commands. Members of Congress are entitled to criticize the president. Citizens are allowed to question power without being labeled traitors. If a politician's worldview can't function inside those basic rules, the problem isn't the rules. It's the worldview. So I'll leave you with this. If a leader jokes about executing opponents, threatens those who uphold the law, and relies on surrogates to say, don't take him literally, is that someone who respects democracy? Or someone who's testing how far he can push it? You don't need a law degree to answer that. You just need to listen to what he says and watch who rushes in to excuse it. If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Should presidential rhetoric about traitors and execution be treated as a joke or as a red line? And do you think the media is doing enough to challenge this "he's just kidding" defense? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you value this kind of breakdown, and subscribe so we can keep cutting through the noise together.